Are you wondering why Rocco's behind bars while half the town's murderers walk free? Let's break down how Port Charles's justice system became its biggest joke. In the grand theatrical tradition of General Hospital, the adult population of Port Charles has long monopolized the art of poor decision-making. But lately, the youth have decided to audition for the same crown. The result? A courtroom farce so spectacularly mismanaged that even the town's mobsters are questioning the integrity of the justice system. At the center of this civic meltdown is poor Rocco, the trembling poster child for Port Charles's institutional incompetence. One moment, he's a wide-eyed boy with a lab key. The next, he's hauled off in handcuffs like he masterminded Watergate. The official charge? Vandalizing a lab. The real crime? Trusting adults to behave like adults. The town's reaction was instant hysteria. Outraged parents, conflicted lovers, corrupt professors, and a district attorney with moral flexibility rivaling the town's skyline. The lab, apparently, had no cameras, no security, and no logic. But sure, let's believe a child managed to waltz in, destroy priceless research, and leave not a single trace of evidence. The Port Charles Police Department, always the gold standard in investigatory excellence, shrugged and decided that fingerprints were an optional step in criminal procedure. Enter Professor Dalton, the academic slime mold of this saga. When faced with a crime scene colder than Sonny Corinthos's espresso, he did what every self-respecting soap villain does. Manufactured evidence. Dalton forged photos, doctored reports, and strutted into court, waving his USB stick of lies like he was presenting the cure for stupidity. And because this is Port Charles, he did so while ignoring a mob warning so direct it practically came engraved on a bullet. Sidwell, Dalton's puppet master and resident power broker, had only one instruction: leave it alone. Naturally, Dalton did the opposite. He wanted revenge, credibility, and probably a posthumous headline reading, "Professor found floating, still clutching his tenure packet." His hubris was so profound it could power the entire Corinthos coffee empire. When the fake evidence blew up, he looked genuinely shocked that the mob, the mayor, and the moral compass of Port Charles, Carly, obviously, didn't send him a fruit basket. Meanwhile, Rocco's courtroom breakdown was the only moment resembling genuine emotion in this fever dream. A terrified child screaming, "I didn't do this!" while adults debated politics, reputations, and which parent could cry more photogenically. The judge, visibly exhausted from decades of Corinthos-related drama, looked him dead in the eye and declared custody. Because in Port Charles, children don't get grounded, they get incarcerated. As Rocco was dragged away, Dante's face crumbled, Sonny's glare promised divine retribution, and the audience collectively wondered how a town that forgives serial killers and amnesiac kidnappers could jail a sixth grader. Dante tried the classic soap defense, emotional appeal, while Sonny's silence spoke volumes. Was a silent Sonny? Is a dangerous Sonny. And Justine Turner, the town's resident DA of dubious ethics, is about to find out that courtroom wins mean little when the mob's patience runs thin. Of course, every tragedy in Port Charles comes with a chorus of self-appointed narrators. Enter Aunt Stella, professional meddler and moral philosopher, who somehow found time to withhold divorce papers, pass spiritual judgment, and make every situation worse through the power of unsolicited advice. Her interference in Curtis and Jordan's failed marriage has already secured her a Lifetime Achievement Award in hypocrisy. Yet here she was, sermonizing about family unity, while the town's youth were being marched off to juvenile hall. Trina, meanwhile, has emerged as Port Charles's reigning queen of misplaced fury. Determined to protect her parents from Big Bad Jordan, she's channeling her inner soap matriarch with none of the experience. Her outbursts oscillate between Shakespearean rage and adolescent tantrum, and her moral compass spins like a fidget toy. In her mind, defending Portia's honor means attacking Jordan's existence. The irony, of course, is that Portia's halo has more cracks than the lab's security system. And speaking of that infamous lab, let's pause to appreciate the creative liberties taken by the GH writers. No security footage, no staff, no access logs, A place supposedly vital to Port Charles's biomedical research apparently runs on trust, and the occasional key fob handed out like candy. When the setup was revealed, viewers could practically hear the collective sigh of disbelief. "Come on, GH writers," one exasperated fan groaned. "Be a bit more realistic." But realism has never been Port Charles' strong suit. As if on cue, the chaos deepened. Dalton, now a dead man walking, doubled down on his stupidity by returning to the lab post-sabotage to take evidence photos. He might as well have signed his own obituary. "Swimming with the fishes," one viewer quipped. And not metaphorically. When Sidwell finds out his subordinate turned the lab into a crime scene and then incriminated himself, Dalton's next publication will be a cautionary tale written in concrete shoes. The entire ordeal could have been avoided had Britt, the supposed head of the lab, stepped forward to clarify that she gave Rocco access. But alas, accountability is not the local dialect. Britt's silence, Rocco's tears, and Dalton's delusion converged into a narrative tornado, sucking in everyone from Sonny to the town's mayor. Laura, ever the tragic figure of reason in a sea of chaos, now finds her political campaign entangled in a child's wrongful arrest. Nothing says, "Re-elect me," quite like your grandson in shackles. And then there's Finn Carr, the actor tasked with making Rocco's terror believable, and to his credit, he delivered a masterclass in emotional devastation. His fear was raw enough to almost distract from the plot holes. Almost. Viewers cheered his performance even as they cursed the writing. Rocco's arrest, they argued, was less a twist than a public service announcement for why Port Charles should defund its police department and hire literally anyone else. The ripple effects are endless. Dalton's forgery will inevitably trigger a mob war. Sidwell's temper will explode. Sonny will deliver one of his patented "you messed with family" speeches, equal parts Shakespearean and caffeinated, and someone, likely Dalton, will be found floating near the harbor before the next ratings sweep. Even the children not directly implicated in the lab fiasco aren't safe from narrative absurdity. Danny, Charlotte, Gio, and Emma all orbit Rocco's downfall with varying degrees of guilt and melodrama. Danny could face jail time, Emma could face a crisis of conscience, and Gio, ever the noble fool, might take the blame for crimes he didn't commit. The kids are, in short, the collateral damage of adult incompetence. It's poetic in a twisted way. Port Charles has always excelled at recycling its tragedies. Parents repeat their sins, children pay the price, and everyone ends up at Kelly's pretending pie can fix trauma. The adults moralize, the teenagers self-destruct, and the audience alternates between laughter and disbelief. The show's writers seem determined to test how much absurdity viewers can endure before they start rooting for the mobsters again. But beyond the satire lies a sad truth. Rocco's storyline exposes everything GH has forgotten about itself. Once a soap about emotional complexity and moral ambiguity, it now reads like a legal parody written by caffeine and chaos. When a child's arrest feels less believable than the town's numerous resurrections, you know realism has officially left the building. Still, there's something perversely entertaining about it all. Watching Port Charles unravel is like witnessing a Greek tragedy staged by reality TV producers. Every character believes they're the hero. Every decision is catastrophically stupid. Every revelation comes too late. Britt's silence, Dalton's arrogance, Sidwell's corruption, and Stella's meddling form a symphony of dysfunction so gloriously overblown it's impossible to look away. And so the curtain falls on Act 1 of this soap opera within a soap opera, a cautionary tale about what happens when adults outsource accountability to teenagers and expect justice from a town where mobsters are more competent than the police. Rocco sits in juvenile detention, Dalton counts his remaining days, and Sonny loads his metaphorical gun of vengeance. The message, intentional or not, is clear. In Port Charles, innocence is negotiable, guilt is optional, and survival depends entirely on which family you belong to. If Rocco's storyline was a tragicomic fable about children paying for adult stupidity, then the ongoing Curtis, Portia, Jordan, Stella, Trina debacle is its parental counterpart. a five-way emotional car crash that's been happening in slow motion for months. It's a love story only Port Charles could produce, equal parts hypocrisy, self-pity, and selective morality. And at this point, the only honest character in the mess is probably the divorce paperwork that Aunt Stella forgot to file. Let's begin with Curtis, a man whose romantic life is less a journey and more a rotating door of déjà vu. He's been married, unmarried, remarried, and emotionally remarried so many times that even the show's continuity department has probably given up. His latest existential crisis revolves around two women, Portia and Jordan, both of whom believe they are the long-suffering victim of his indecision, and both of whom have perfected the art of being right for the wrong reasons. Portia, the self-anointed queen of righteousness, entered this triangle already drenched in irony. Once the interloper in Curtis and Jordan's marriage, she now clutches her pearls at the mere hint of emotional overlap between her husband and his ex. The woman who once weaponized chemistry as a moral argument now spends her days moralizing about loyalty. Her mantra, "Jordan must respect my marriage." Translation: please ignore the fact that I'm currently acting suspiciously guilty while pretending to be the patron saint of fidelity. Of course, guilt does seem to be Portia's preferred fragrance. The woman has more secrets than the Cassadines have heirs. Her latest? A conveniently timed entanglement with Dr. Isaiah, the newly imported plot device whose sole purpose appears to be proving that Portia's moral compass can't withstand even mild temptation. Depending on which scene you watch, their connection either happened before the marriage ended, making it adultery, or after, making it poor taste. In Port Charles, the distinction hardly matters. Fidelity is less a principle than a scheduling conflict. Curtis, for his part, behaves like a man who believes introspection is for other people. One minute he's yearning for emotional clarity. The next, he's holding hands with his ex-wife in hallways and calling it closure. His emotional radar is so broken he could trip over his own integrity and blame the furniture. He talks about honesty like it's a foreign language, one he's been meaning to learn, but never quite gets around to. Then there's Jordan, forever cast as the villainess of other women's insecurity. She's neither blameless nor as wicked as her detractors claim, which makes her the perfect soap character, tragically self-righteous, ethically ambiguous, and perpetually one conversation away from being misunderstood. Her crime? Existing. Simply being alive within Curtis's emotional orbit is enough to send Portia spiraling into martyrdom. The woman can't even deliver municipal news without being accused of plotting seduction. And into this already overpopulated emotional battlefield steps Aunt Stella, Port Charles's resident meddler, moral historian, and part-time guilt merchant. Stella has never met a private conversation she didn't feel entitled to interrupt. She preaches family unity while secretly hoarding crucial documents in her purse. Her brand of wisdom arrives wrapped in scripture and sabotage. It was she, after all, who decided that filing divorce papers was optional, a small oversight that, in true soap logic, somehow nullified an entire legal process and reignited a love triangle the size of upstate New York. In another town, Stella's antics would earn her a polite restraining order. In Port Charles, she's treated like the voice of divine reason. Her moralizing comes sprinkled with nostalgia, but the result is always the same: chaos disguised as care. By invoking the memory of Curtis's late mother every time she wants her way, Stella turns guilt into performance art. The woman could weaponize empathy and call it community service. And then we have Trina, the prodigal daughter with a righteous streak so fiery it could power the Corinthos coffee roasters. Once the show's moral center, she's now been reduced to a self-appointed guardian of her mother's ego. Watching her berate Jordan for daring to exist is like watching a valedictorian join a school fight club. Impressive in execution, tragic in purpose. Her misguided loyalty to Portia is almost sweet until it curdles into condescension. The young woman who once stood for independence has become a mouthpiece for parental hypocrisy. Trina's greatest flaw isn't her anger, it's her ignorance. She defends Portia's sanctity without realizing that her mother's moral high ground was built on quicksand. She lectures Jordan about boundaries while ignoring that her mother has violated every one of them. And when she cries about protecting her family, it's hard not to notice that she's simply rehearsing Portia's lines from 20 years ago, back when protecting family meant chasing a married man named Curtis. The irony is delicious. Trina's wrath toward Jordan would make more sense if Jordan had, say, broken into the house, seduced her stepfather, and gotten pregnant. But that's Portia's origin story. The cycle is poetic. A daughter fighting to preserve a marriage born from her mother's affair, blind to the fact that history is already repeating itself in the form of one Dr. Isaiah. The poor girl thinks she's defending love. She's actually defending bad writing. Meanwhile, Portia continues her descent into sanctimony. She scolds Jordan about propriety while secretly dreading a paternity test that could turn her marriage into an encore of her last scandal. Her moral outrage would be more convincing if she weren't constantly dodging her own reflection. When the inevitable truth emerges, that she once again doesn't know who fathered her child, she'll likely respond with the same wide-eyed astonishment she used the first time. And through it all, Jordan maintains an almost supernatural calm, the kind that only comes from years of being blamed for other people's insecurities. She could publish a self-help book titled How to Be the Villain in Someone Else's Marriage Without Trying. Her every gesture is misinterpreted, every word twisted. Yet somehow, she remains the only adult in this romantic asylum who occasionally remembers how accountability works. Of course, the writers couldn't resist throwing a little melodramatic seasoning into the mix. There's talk of Portia's mysterious baby, the one whose paternal lineage is apparently a greater state secret than the contents of the Cassadine vault. Depending on who you ask, the child belongs to Curtis, Isaiah, or divine intervention. In any case, Portia's plan is clear. Conceal, deflect, and hope no one owns a DNA kit, because nothing says healthy marriage like a paternity cliffhanger. As for Curtis, he oscillates between guilt and oblivion with the precision of a metronome. One minute he's swearing devotion to Portia, the next he's reminiscing about Jordan's loyalty. His emotional consistency could qualify as a weather pattern, unpredictable, frequently stormy, and best observed from a safe distance. The man's indecision isn't romantic. It's exhausting. What makes this storyline so perversely fascinating is how perfectly it mirrors the show's broader dysfunction. GH has turned the concept of accountability into performance art. Everyone claims the moral high ground around while simultaneously digging their own grave. Curtis blames circumstance. Portia blames Jordan. Jordan blames fate. And Stella blames the Lord's mysterious ways, which is code for my own meddling. Trina, ever the emotional barometer, has started to unravel under the weight of these adult lies. Her once sympathetic frustration has evolved into arrogance, a sort of inherited narcissism that makes her believe she's the moral compass of her entire family. But she's no saint. She's simply a mirror reflecting Portia's delusion of control. When the inevitable truth about her mother's affair and potential new pregnancy surfaces, her righteous fury will collapse into the kind of soap opera despair that fuels Sweep's week. And Aunt Stella will, inevitably, appear in the background, clutching her pearls, muttering about the Lord's plan, blissfully unaware that she is the Lord's plan, a divine punishment for everyone's refusal to mind their own business. Even Jordan, for all her composure, can't escape the absurdity. She's trapped in a narrative loop that punishes her for telling the truth. Her transparency is treated as manipulation, her silence as deceit. Portia wants her to disappear, Stella wants her to repent, and Curtis wants her on speed dial. She's simultaneously the villain, the conscience, and the collateral damage. At this point, one starts to wonder if the writers are conducting a psychological experiment. How much hypocrisy can one town sustain before it implodes? Port Charles is a petri dish of self-justification. Every character, no matter how wrong, finds a way to rebrand their mistakes as virtue. Adultery becomes emotional clarity. Lying becomes protection. Meddling becomes love. It's a masterclass in delusion. Still, it's hard not to admire the sheer theatricality of it all. The performances are committed, the tears well-timed, and the confrontations staged like Shakespearean duels. Trina's showdown with Jordan, complete with the immortal line, "My dad listens to me, and I'll make sure you two never get back together," was pure dramatic bliss. No diplomacy, no hesitation, just generational arrogance delivered with impeccable diction. Somewhere, Aunt Stella probably stood up and applauded. The tragedy, of course, is that beneath all the melodrama lies a genuinely compelling story about cycles of mistrust and inherited insecurity. The problem isn't the concept, it's the execution. The writers treat introspection like filler dialogue, preferring to drag every revelation across 6 months of accusatory glares and conveniently overheard conversations. The result is less soap opera, more emotional hostage situation. And yet, despite the exhaustion, viewers can't look away. The spectacle of Portia's moral collapse, Curtis's emotional paralysis, Jordan's stoic suffering, Trina's righteous fury, and Stella's sanctified meddling is too delicious to resist. They are the dysfunctional heart of Port Charles, the grown-ups behaving worse than the children they lecture. So where does it go from here? Predictably downhill, Portia's guilt will metastasize into paranoia. Curtis will rediscover his feelings for Jordan during a blackout or a conveniently timed medical emergency. Trina will discover the truth at the worst possible moment, probably during a public event. Aunt Stella will deliver a sermon about forgiveness while quietly causing more damage. And the audience will once again be reminded that, in Port Charles, self-awareness is a luxury no one can afford. The moral of this mess? Adulthood in Port Charles is a performance, and everyone's auditioning for sainthood while tripping over their own scandals. Curtis wants to be the good man who can't choose between two women. Portia wants to be the faithful wife with selective amnesia. Jordan wants to be the voice of reason in a town that mistakes logic for betrayal. Trina wants to be the daughter who fixes what her parents destroyed. And Aunt Stella, she just wants another scene. In the end, this isn't a love story. It's a case study in denial. A parade of people too proud to admit that they're not victims of circumstance, but architects of their own misery. Port Charles doesn't need another wedding. It needs an intervention. If Port Charles were a monarchy, Carly Corinthos would be its unchallenged sovereign, a woman who ascended to power through sheer audacity and has ruled ever since with a crown made of chaos and caffeine. She's the gravitational force around which this entire soap spins, and her current reign, part prophecy, part therapy session, only proves what longtime viewers already know. Carly isn't just a character, she's an institution. Her latest crusade finds her playing both the Greek chorus and the judge in her nephew Lucas's spectacularly ill-fated love life. Lucas, bless his oblivious heart, has fallen for Marco Sidwell, a man whose moral compass points exclusively toward ulterior motives. When Lucas proudly announces that he and Marco are moving into Windermere, Carly nearly chokes on her latte. "That is not happening," she declares, and in Port Charles, Carly's declarations are as binding as a court order, because Carly knows Windermere. Everyone does. The place has hosted more murders, hauntings, and nervous breakdowns than a century's worth of Shakespearean tragedies. You don't move into Windermere, you get absorbed by it. Its moat has a body count, its corridors echo with betrayal, and every window has seen a crime. The fact that Lucas sees this Gothic tax shelter as a romantic backdrop says more about his judgment than his love life. Lucas, ever the tragic optimist, interprets Marco's attention as affection instead of opportunism. He's a man who mistakes intensity for intimacy, the perfect victim for a Sidwell. His pattern is as predictable as the GH writer's fondness for last-minute weddings. He finds a damaged man, builds him into a fantasy, and collapses under the weight of his own delusion. From Brad to Marco, Lucas's romances all follow the same arc: passionate beginning, catastrophic middle, humiliating end. And Marco? He's not a lover. He's a strategist. The son of a manipulative power broker, he's inherited his father's talent for charm as weaponry. His relationship with Lucas isn't built on love. It's a campaign. Through Lucas, he gains access to Sonny's world, to Carly's radar, and to Port Charles' endless web of influence. Marco doesn't need affection. He needs leverage. Unfortunately for him, Carly spots ambition faster than a sniper sights a target. Her instincts are legendary. She survived mob wars, faked deaths, and serial betrayals, and yet she still emerges from every storyline perfectly blow-dried and morally smug. When she tells Lucas that Marco isn't it, she's not meddling. She's diagnosing. Lucas protests, citing Carly's long list of complicated romances, forgetting that his aunt doesn't need relationship advice. She is relationship advice, weaponized. It's a testament to the show's enduring absurdity that Carly, a woman who has committed nearly every sin known to soapdom, now functions as its moral compass. And yet somehow it works. Because while other characters drown in self-deception, Carly swims in clarity. Her hypocrisy is honest, her contradictions deliberate. She doesn't claim to be pure, she claims to be right. And in Port Charles, those are not the same thing. Meanwhile, her daughter Joss tries to play peacemaker, gently reminding everyone that maybe screaming at Lucas won't solve his love life. Carly, unimpressed, sips her drink and essentially replies, "Sweetheart, I don't do gentle." For her, diplomacy is just delayed accuracy. If Carly is the reigning monarch, Ava Jerome is her dark mirror, the Duchess of Damage, forever balancing between villainy and victimhood. Once the show's femme fatale, Ava has evolved into something far more unsettling. A woman who believes her own redemption arc. She's the town's most glamorous hypocrite, always one crisis away from absolution, and one monologue away from relapse. It's almost impressive how thoroughly GH has tried to sand down Ava's edges, as if a new hairstyle and a few tragic tears could erase the small matter of murder. This is a woman who sabotaged Morgan's medication, gaslit half the town, and indirectly orchestrated her own daughter's death, yet still expects sympathy because she occasionally cries over a painting. Her history reads like a textbook on sociopathic multitasking. She killed Connie Falconeri, manipulated Kiki until their relationship combusted, switched out Morgan's bipolar meds with placebos, and then had the audacity to grieve him like a martyr. She seduced, schemed, and self-destructed with a level of artistry that made her a legend. But legend doesn't mean likable. Even in a town that routinely forgives mob bosses and reformed murderers, Ava stands apart. There's a hollowness to her redemption, a self-awareness without sincerity. When she strokes Avery's hair and coos about motherhood, one half expects her to start quoting Macbeth. There's always an echo of guilt beneath her glamour, a sense that she's rehearsing the part of changed woman while secretly mourning her own edge. And yet, Maura West makes it impossible to look away. She plays Ava not as a repentant sinner, but as an addict, hooked on drama, incapable of sobriety from chaos. Her interactions with Carly are electric precisely because they are two sides of the same dysfunctional coin. Carly, the survivor who thrives on control. Ava, the survivor who thrives on catastrophe. Together, they are the moral yin and yang of Port Charles, proof that the show's women are far more compelling as villains than as saints. The problem isn't that Ava's done terrible things, it's that the writers keep pretending she hasn't. Viewers remember the diary entries, the pills, the lies. They remember Morgan's descent into madness and Kiki's death at the hands of a serial killer she indirectly motivated. No amount of smoky lighting or tragic violin cues can erase that. Ava's redemption would land if it acknowledged her darkness, instead of burying it under motherhood and designer clothes. Speaking of legacy villains and their offspring, the Cassadine clan continues its eternal cycle of melodrama, manipulation, and monologues about the family name. Charlotte Cassadine, the latest heiress to chaos, has become the talk of Port Charles precisely because she might finally bring back the Cassadine menace the show sorely misses. Viewers are divided. Some want her to embrace her Cassadine ruthlessness. Others want her to act more like a Spencer. In truth, she's both, a cocktail of cold calculation and adolescent impulsivity, the perfect heir to a family that breeds masterminds and martyrs in equal measure. Charlotte's icy composure contrasts beautifully with the hysterical morality of everyone else. While Rocco trembles and Danny moralizes, Charlotte simply calculates. She's not yet evil, just competent, which in Port Charles is far more dangerous. Watching her inherit Valentine's cunning without his guilt feels like witnessing the rebirth of the Cassadine legacy. And frankly, it's about time. The show's long obsession with redemption arcs has left a villain vacuum, and Charlotte looks ready to fill it. The town's resident intellectuals can debate bloodlines all they want, Cassadine, Spencer, Quartermain, but at the end of the day, Port Charles runs on sin. And lately, the sins have been losing their conviction, which is why the whispers about Alexis and her long-buried Cassadine lineage are so tantalizing. A return to her darker alter ego, Natasha, would be the kind of narrative jolt the show desperately needs. Imagine Alexis shedding her ethical lawyer routine and embracing her inner dagger-wielding aristocrat, a woman who could argue a case by day and commit treason by night. The audience would forgive every implausible twist, as long as it meant a return to unapologetic villainy. But for every potential resurrection of intrigue, GH buries itself under the weight of psychological subplots that play like budgeted thrillers. Consider the Willow and Michael fiasco, a storyline that began as domestic tension and now teeters on psychological horror. Willow, once the personification of moral purity, is rapidly unraveling into something far darker. Theories abound. Split personality, fugue state, or simply another case of Port Charles amnesia. What's clear is that the writers have transformed her into a walking case study in repressed violence. The town's collective suspicion that Willow may have shot Drew during a blackout has reignited one of the show's favorite themes, guilt as inheritance. Every Corinthos by blood or by marriage eventually cracks under the weight of family secrecy. Michael, perpetually sanctimonious, now faces the same moral rot he once condemned in his parents. His campaign of vengeance and manipulation has made him indistinguishable from the very mobsters he claims to despise. It's poetic justice disguised as plot development. If Willow truly did commit the crime, it would finally give her depth, a much-needed departure from the porcelain saint routine. The idea that her suppressed rage and trauma could manifest as violence is not only believable, it's compelling. Of course, this being General Hospital, the writers will likely opt for a more forgiving twist: temporary insanity, repressed memory, or possession by the ghost of Nell. Either way, expect Ferncliff to prepare a fresh suite. Amid all this melodrama, one thing remains consistent. The show's women carry its narrative weight. Whether it's Carly dismantling men with brutal precision, Ava weaponizing vulnerability, or Willow potentially unraveling into a one-woman crime spree, GH thrives when its women misbehave. The men, Curtis, Drew, Michael, and their perpetually furrowed brows, merely orbit around them like confused satellites. Even the Cassadine men, once the Gothic titans of villainy, have been reduced to romantic accessories. Valentine broods, Nicholas vanishes, Spencer's legacy is mentioned more than felt. The true Cassadine energy now flows through Charlotte, and perhaps Alexis, if the writers ever rediscover her edge. The matriarchy is rising, and Port Charles is finally interesting again. But for every flash of brilliance, the show sabotages itself with moral inconsistency. Ava escapes justice for murder, while Rocco faces juvenile detention for existing near a lab. Portia moralizes about fidelity while redefining adultery by the hour. Michael condemns corruption while staging evidence. Sunny oscillates between mob boss and moral compass, and Carly, the eternal constant, delivers soliloquies on truth while rewriting it in real time. And yet, it all works, not because the stories make sense, but because the hypocrisy is the point. Port Charles isn't a place where justice triumphs, it's a stage where everyone performs virtue while sinning in style. That's why Carly endures, Ava fascinates, and the Cassadines never die. The show's moral compass spins wildly, but its magnet is always the same: power. By the time the next cliffhanger rolls around, someone will be dead, someone will be pregnant, and someone will be pretending not to love sunny Corinthos. But the real entertainment lies in the pattern. The way the same sins are repackaged, restyled, and reperformed. The town never changes. It just accessorizes. So, What remains when you strip away the melodrama, the monologues, and the endless "who's the father" mysteries? A truth both absurd and oddly comforting. Port Charles is a reflection of every character who refuses to learn. Its citizens are addicted not to love, but to narrative chaos. And its greatest gift, to viewers and cynics alike, is the sheer audacity of pretending that redemption is still possible in a town that clearly enjoys damnation far more. The final verdict: Carly reigns, Ava endures, the Cassadines brood, Portia repents, badly. Jordan sighs, Trina fumes, Rocco suffers, and the rest of Port Charles keeps spinning in beautifully orchestrated dysfunction. A symphony of scandal that proves once again that on General Hospital, morality is optional, but drama is forever. Here's everything you might have missed this week in Port Charles. General Hospital spoilers for November 17 to 21. Tease the aftermath of Rocco's sacrifice after a rough week for the PCPD. Sonny reminded Michael what's at stake if he continues his vendetta against Willow. Chase visited Willow in Pentonville with a plan to exonerate her and get proof on Michael, while Alexis got Willow a new arraignment. Michael told Nina that she can spend time with Wiley. Dante warned Brooklyn that Chase may be risking his career to help Willow. Britt asked Portia to help her get her old job back and noted that she can tell she's pregnant. Ned found out that Drew stole Tracy's boxes, and for so angry, he had a heart attack, during which Drew left him outside of Bobby's to die. Emma and Gio found Ned struggling outside of Bobby's, and Emma got Britt to help revive him. When Ned got to the hospital, Gio called Olivia, and they learned he'll need bypass surgery. Elizabeth felt wary about Lucas moving into Windermere. Charlotte, Danny, and Rocco got the key fob and decided to break into the lab themselves. Brooklyn warned Chase not to put his badge on the line for Willow. Michael let Wiley have dessert with him and Jacinda, much to Nina's. Later, Willow walked in and spotted them. Dante became acting police commissioner and hired back Nathan. Jason stopped Britt from digging her hole deeper with Portia as they worked on Ned. When the kids broke into the lab, Dalton came in and caught Rocco. He brought him to the auditorium, where Laura and Ezra were preparing for their final debate. Willow tore into Michael for allowing Wiley to meet Jacinda. Drew reminded Alexis what's at stake if she doesn't prove Michael shot him. Laura ditched the debate when Dalton had Rocco arrested. Dante was forced to be the commissioner instead of Dad during Rocco's arrest. Chase and Nathan got to know each other as their new partners. Britt asked Sidwell to get Dalton to back off of Rocco. Molly continued writing her new book. When Rick offered to represent Sonny, Sonny asked him to prove himself by representing Rocco. Carly lost it when she learned Lucas plans on moving in with Marco. Trina accused Jordan of coming between her parents, while Stella admitted to Curtis she can tell Portia's pregnant. ADA Turner offered a plea deal for Rocco, but when Dalton lied about Rocco trashing his lab, Justine was forced to retract the plea deal and charge Rocco, leading to Rocco being hauled off to jail until his bail hearing. Laura and Sonny were both certain something wasn't right about Dalton's story. But seriously, where is Kevin? General Hospital fans can be insightful, clever, and utterly hilarious when it comes to their favorite soap. Here are the best fan tweets from the week of November 10, 14. When Willow judges Michael for introducing Wiley to known sex worker Jacinda, this fan had a hilarious response. Willow had sex with Drew on top of Scout's Labubus, but got the nerve to try and slut-shame Jacinda. Drew's cane has been a can't-miss accessory lately, and this fan finally said what we've all been thinking when we see Congressman Cutthroat limping around Port Charles. Don't they make taller canes? Drew's is ridiculously small for him. Portia called the lady a disgraced doctor, this fan said about Portia's back and forth with Britt, along with a laughing gif. You've got to love hypocrisy. Many GH fans can't get past Britt's past, and this fan called out Jason's ability to befriend her. Jason is a better person than some of us when it comes to Britt Brat, they wrote, along with a gif that state, I'll leave it at that. The Laura and Martin discourse has been entertaining, but not as entertaining as this bold tweet about Laura's MIA husband, Kevin. Martin's really kissing Laura's ass big time, isn't he? Too bad he won't get moved back into her house with Invisible Kevin. And finally, this tweet sums up what all of us are thinking now that Dante, Chase, and Nathan are all working together at the Peace PD. Holy cannoli! Dante, Chase, and Nathan working together at the Peace PD, the GH fan wrote, along with a gif of a woman fainting. Tempers flare across Port Charles as secrets, guilt, and fury explode, setting the stage for confrontations that could change everything. The General Hospital spoilers for Monday, November 17th, focus on some seriously volatile emotions. Anger being one of them, expect Britt and Emma to face off in an inevitable confrontation. The acting police commissioner is also dealing with an anger issue. As for Trina, she must be dealing with a whole mess of emotions, including fear, guilt, and more fear, because she suddenly wants to confess. It's no secret that the teens' mission to break into Dalton's lab turned into a debacle. Rocco was arrested, while Charlotte and Danny had to confess to their parents and others, so they could help Rocco. Even though Emma called off the illegal activity after Ned had a heart attack, she and Gio felt all kinds of guilt for including the younger teens in the first place. They know they should never have put them in this position, but they thought Rocco had the best chance at stealing Britt's key fob, and Britt knows it. There is already bad blood between Britt and Emma, but on Monday, the two are set to face off and have it out. We shudder to think of the fallout after these two go head-to-head. They will both give as good as they get. Additionally, Britt will be on an even bigger tear because, at Rocco's arraignment, he was railroaded. The new charges were more severe and carry larger sentences, which won't sit well with Britt. Emma may need to brace herself. Meanwhile, Trina may also face her own legal troubles. She and Kai were at Drew's house the night of the attempted murder, and Kai walked off with evidence that could direct the PCPD's focus towards Portia. They also destroyed the evidence. The guilt and fear must be getting to Trina because she wants to confess, and that wouldn't be good for her family. On the first day of Dante's tenure as acting police commissioner, he had to deal with his son's legal troubles, but he stayed calm, cool, and collected, and he made sure he didn't let anybody see him treating his son with preferential treatment. But that calmness could only last so long. On Monday, Dante loses his temper. Does he direct his temper towards someone in particular? Gio and Emma were the ones behind the plan to break into the lab. Are Dante and Gio about to have a problem again? Let's hope not. They are this close to having a breakthrough. It feels like Gio is ready to accept his Quartermain status and his status as Brooke Lynn's and Dante's son. While Lulu confides in Carly, Alexis confers with Felicia. Alexis hired Felicia to gather information about Portia's whereabouts the night of Drew's shooting. Felicia quickly figured out that Portia lied about her alibi. Will Felicia give Alexis enough ammunition to bring Portia's name up to the PCPD? General Hospital spoilers report Ava Jerome is itching to find love again, and so soon after that colossal crash and burn with Rick Lansing. After chaining the poor guy up in Alexis Davis' basement for a month, drugging him, and working to swindle him out of millions he stole with her from Alexis, Ava might be ready for a bit cleaner relationship. That was a lot of drama, but who are we kidding? She loves it as long as she doesn't come under fire and risk her shared custody status with Sonny Corinthos. Nothing matters to Ava more than staying in her daughter's life, and Avery Corinthos has grown accustomed to her parents getting along over the last year. So leave it to Ava to start barking up the very wrong tree that is Jen's Sidwell. This could change everything. It's been nice having Sonny and Ava getting along. They are doing more than just keeping up appearances. They seem to actually have some mutual respect for one another. Although Ava laments now and again that Sonny's world is dangerous and unnecessary, it's a bit like the pot calling the kettle black. She grew up in a mob family and participated in it for many years. She might be out of organized crime now, but she's still every bit a criminal. Just ask Rick. Sonny has been enjoying this new wave of peace with his baby mama, but we can bet he'll have something to say about it if he gets wind that Ava is spending time with Sidwell. Sidwell knew just who to call when he decided to furnish Windermere with more art than the walls can handle. Every opportunity he has to spend time with Ava is like currency for him, because he wants to shower her with compliments and ingratiate himself. It's clear that Sidwell plans to make a move in Ava's direction, and she's not exactly turning that down. Of course, he already tried to chat with her about Sunny, but she was all about keeping things professional and not delving into Sunny's dark underworld. Little does she know Sidwell plays in the same space. He's nearly got his hooks in her now. Sidwell is pretty good at playing the hand he's been dealt. He seems fairly confident that Ava won't merely remain his art dealer, and if he can court her into a more dangerous space where she starts spilling the tea about Sunny, that's just gravy. The bigger fish here is Sidwell being able to get under Sunny's skin by getting close to the mother of his child. Just how quickly can Sidwell make things move from professional art relationship to something more? We should ask ourselves how soon Ava desires a Rick rebound and a new place to live, shouldn't we? There is no way peace will remain with Sunny if Ava lets Sidwell into Avery's world. Is she smart enough to see when she's being used? Or so desperate that being used would be welcomed? General Hospital recaps for Friday, November 14th reveal Carly Spencer lashed out at Lucas Jones, while Stella Henry pressured Curtis Ashford. Plus, Trina Robinson confronted Jordan Ashford, and Rocco Falconeri was framed. Carly's anger boils over. Carly fiercely objects to Lucas moving into Windermere with Marco, warning him about Sidwell's danger and drawing a sharp line between them. Stella pushes Curtis to reconcile. Despite Curtis's resolve to divorce Portia, Stella insists the baby changes everything, urging him to save his marriage before it's too late. Trina takes aim at Jordan. Fueled by loyalty to her mother, Trina confronts Jordan and vows to keep her father from ever going back to his ex. Rocco is framed for a serious crime. What begins as a simple lab break-in spirals when new evidence emerges, forcing Rick and Laura to fight for justice as Rocco faces devastating charges. Lucas met with Carly and Jocelyn Jacks at Bobby's to share his exciting news that he and Marco were going to live together. Carly was surprised and unsure if he was ready for such a big change, but she was willing to help them find a place. Until Lucas mentioned they were moving into Windermere. That made her try to stop it. Lucas reminded her that it was his choice. And he argued it was a good way for him and Marco Rios to test living together before getting their own apartment. Carly argued that Jens Sidwell was a threat, having previously blown up Charlie's pub. Lucas replied that there was no evidence of that, so she pointed out what the villain had done to Anna Devane, Jason Morgan, and Lucky Spencer in Africa. When Lucas attempted to liken Sidwell to Sunny, Carly became even more upset. She angrily stated that her brother was trying too hard to prove something. Jocelyn attempted to soothe her mother, but Lucas pushed Carly to express her feelings. She pointed out that, at best, Marco was just as misguided as Lucas regarding his father's business. But at worst, he was taking advantage of Lucas due to his ties with her and Sonny Corinthos. Lucas felt hurt that she doubted Marco's love for him. Carly warned him against making that mistake and looked to Jocelyn for support. But Jocelyn argued that Lucas should have the freedom to make his own choices and that they should back him up. Lucas valued her support and said, "Don't worry, sis, you don't have to visit, and I don't need your approval to be happy." With that, he left angrily. Carly was hurt by Lucas's feelings towards her. Jocelyn offered to help mend things, but Carly expressed her disappointment in Joss too. Wanting Lucas to connect with Sidwell for her WSB project, Jocelyn tried to downplay the situation. But Carly insisted that she understood better than anyone how perilous Sidwell could be. At a nearby table, Stella urged Curtis to share his thoughts with her. When he said he didn't want to talk about what was bothering him, she replied, "Too bad. I know that you and Portia Robinson are expecting a baby." She explained how she figured it out and couldn't understand why he would hide such great news from her. Curtis confessed it was complicated because he and Portia were in the process of getting a divorce. Stella proposed they consider counseling, as they had 6 or 7 months to reconcile before the baby arrived. Curtis felt the baby didn't change anything, but she insisted that it changed everything. She didn't want him to miss a second chance to be a father and raise a child from birth. Curtis clarified that he planned to, but not while still married to Portia. Stella contended that their child deserved both parents in their life and remained hopeful they could resolve their issues. Curtis gently reminded his aunt that this decision wasn't hers to make, and he and Portia had agreed to separate. He pointed out that many divorced parents successfully raise children, but Stella maintained they needed to try again and urged him to fix his marriage or risk regretting it later. When Trina failed to answer her work question at the gallery, Ava Jerome sensed that her friend was troubled and encouraged her to share her feelings. Trina disclosed that her parents were divorcing, expressing confusion over her emotional response since she hadn't experienced them together during her upbringing. Nevertheless, Trina noted that she could see the love between them and maintained that their separation was not simply due to growing apart, but rather influenced by external factors. Just then, Sidwell came with Marco and Jordan to accept Ava's invitation to view some art, while Trina shot a glare at Jordan. Ava congratulated Marco on Lucas moving in with him, and he was grateful for her support, inviting her to dinner. Trina inquired about Jordan's reason for being there, to which Jordan responded that she was looking for art for her new apartment. Trina courteously led Jordan to see some paintings, and Marco left, leaving Sidwell to suggest to Ava that Lucas moving in with Marco might help mend things with Carly. Plus, it could eventually bring peace with Sonny. Ava warned that hoping for peace with Carly might be futile, but Sonny's mood would depend on whether he could keep his peers. Lucas arrived, and Sidwell stepped away to allow them to talk. Lucas expressed his gratitude to Ava for believing in his ability to manage his own life, and she realized he had informed Carly, who reacted as expected. Lucas then embraced his aunt in a thankful hug. Once Trina had Jordan by herself, she confronted her father's ex for interfering in her parents' marriage and causing their divorce. When Jordan pointed out that Portia had obviously involved herself in this situation, Trina cautioned her against mentioning her mother and insisted that she understood the truth on her own. Jordan was not interested in arguing, but Trina gave a tight smile and said, "Oh, we're not arguing, we're not even discussing it. Because my dad loves me, and he listens to me, and I'm going to ensure that he never returns to you." Rick Lansing arrived at the police station to meet Acting District Attorney Justine Turner. Justine was taken aback that he was representing Rocco, especially when Rick mentioned that Sonny had personally requested him. When she attempted to negotiate a deal for a year of community service, Rick chuckled and proposed 2 months instead. She cautioned that Rocco might face charges for breaking and entering, but he highlighted the weakness of her case, prompting her to revise her offer to 6 months. Then Britt Westbourne hurried into the station to discuss Rocco with the commissioner. After learning from Nathan West that Dante Falconeri was the acting police commissioner, she assumed he would put a stop to everything. Nathan reminded his sister that Dante couldn't show favoritism to his son, but as a minor, Rocco would probably just receive a light punishment. Britt asked Nathan to keep an eye on Rocco. As they left for the arraignment together, Britt stopped when she noticed Professor Henry Dalton arriving to speak with Justine. At Sonny's house, Lulu Spencer voiced her worries about Rick representing her son. But Sonny reassured her that despite his flaws, his brother was a great lawyer. Lulu was confused about how everything unfolded and where the notion that Dalton was involved in illegal animal testing came from, but she felt proud of Rocco for standing up for his brother and sister. Outside, Gio Palmieri expressed regret for not being able to assist, but Rocco understood and didn't want anyone else to face trouble with him. He told Gio that as a minor, he would likely just receive community service and would be okay. Back at the house, Rocco embraced Gio before going to court with Lulu and Sonny. Gio and Emma Scorpio Drake made an important choice. Emma visited Gio to see how he was doing, and he confessed he felt anxious because he wanted to help but felt powerless. Emma reassured him that Ned Quartermain was receiving excellent care at the hospital, and stepping in to assist Rocco would only lead to trouble for him, too. "So my little brother gets in trouble," Gio complained. "And I don't even try to take my part of the blame. I don't know if I can handle that." Emma told him it wasn't his responsibility. It was hers since she initiated this whole fight against Dalton. Gio countered that while she might have been mistaken about the animals, she was right to go after Dalton because he's a bad person. He expressed his plan to tell Lulu and Dante the truth about what happened, but promised to keep Emma's name out of it. She reminded him that they are supposed to face this together. Then she insisted that if he wants to be honest, they should do it as a team. Laura Collins encountered Dante at the courthouse, and he advised her not to stay for Rocco's arraignment, concerned that her being there might negatively impact her mayoral election chances. Laura stated that although she cherished her job, family comes first. Dante contended that the city requires her, and she shouldn't jeopardize the election by being beside Sonny in court. Laura felt relieved to learn that the charges had been reduced to a misdemeanor, but she was anxious about how Rocco would react if she wasn't present for her grandson. Lulu and Rocco showed up at the courthouse with Sonny. Rick spoke with them and said he had made a deal with Justine, telling Rocco to follow his example and assuring him that everything would be okay. As Rocco walked into the courtroom, he felt happy that his family was there to support him, but Lulu was not happy to see Britt. The teenager was especially thankful to see his grandma, and Laura mentioned she wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Sonny offered to switch seats, but Laura told him she didn't want to hide their friendship. Britt was taken aback when Marco sat beside her, and he said he was there to give Diane Miller a complete update on the proceedings. The judge opened the court session, but as Rick began to discuss the plea deal they had arranged, Justine interrupted to say it was no longer an option due to changes in circumstances. She disclosed that Rocco was now facing charges for destroying proprietary information. Also, there were dangerous materials that could have led to fatalities on campus if they had been released during his vandalism of the lab. The courtroom was filled with shock as Rick asked for a delay, but the judge stated he could review the new evidence before the trial. Laura leaned over to Sonny and mentioned that Rocco never vandalized the lab since Dalton hadn't mentioned anything about it back then, and he concurred that something seemed off. Due to the serious charges, the judge decided Rocco would go to trial and stay in custody until his bail hearing. Rick asked to set bail immediately, but the judge said it would be in 2 days. An upset Rocco shouted that he never touched anything in the lab, while Dante and Lulu tried to comfort him. After leaving court, Marco called Sidwell to say it was over and worse than we feared, as Laura leaned towards the mobster to say, "Our grandson's been framed." Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to check back with Celebrating the Soaps for all the latest General Hospital spoilers, news, rumors, comings and goings, and updates. General Hospital spoilers are in for Monday, November 17th, 2025. Fans can expect the next episode to show Emma Scorpio Drake getting manhandled. Rick Lansing has a proposition for Alexis Davis. Plus, Laura Collins has a meltdown in front of cameras and reporters. Keep reading, and let's talk about what is coming up in the ABC soap opera. Laura's public meltdown. The mayor's fury boils over when she publicly accuses a rival of lying, setting off a media firestorm that could derail her political future. Rick's risky proposition. Rick Lansing stuns Alexis with an unexpected offer that leaves her questioning his motives and her own judgment. Emma and Gio in trouble. Britt's harsh confrontation with Emma and Gio's emotional confession to Brooklyn spark a chain reaction that could alter Rocco's fate forever. Let's start off with Emma and Britt Westbourne. Unfortunately, Rocco Falconeri's arraignment didn't do very well. The young man is definitely being set up. While he and the others did break into the lab, something feels very wrong about this. Meanwhile, Emma is at the hospital when she runs into Britt. The doctor grabs the college student's arm roughly in a preview clip. When Emma demands she get her hands off of her, Britt says not until they get a few things straight. Over in Portia Robinson's office, she meets with Curtis Ashford. It seems that Stella Henry's words might have gotten to Curtis. The man has come with a proposition. Portia asks if he's suggesting they stay together for the baby. This man needs to just make up his mind and stick with it. General Hospital spoilers for Monday, November 17th reveal that Giovanni Gio Palmieri wants to confess to save Rocco. The young man ends up going to his birth mother, Brooklyn Quartermain. The violinist tells the brunette that he is the reason why Rocco broke into the lab. Standing in the hallway at the courthouse, Laura is surrounded by cameras and reporters. Then, Laura looks at someone, probably Ezra Boyle or even Professor Henry Hank Dalton. The mayor then loudly declares that the man is a liar as reporters film and snap photos. As for Rocco's case, Lulu Spencer turns to Carly Spencer for help. The reporter says Rocco could go to prison if she doesn't do something drastic. There is also an interesting exchange between Rick Lansing and Alexis Davis. As Alexis looks suspicious, Rick says, "Maybe you and I should do the same." Considering the hostage situation not that long ago, I'm not sure if Alexis should trust him at all. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most on Monday, November 17th, 2025? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to check back with Celebrating the Soaps for all the latest General Hospital spoilers, news, rumors, comings and goings, and updates.